I'm Karen, and I want to share with you an epic week of hiking that my wife and I have just undertaken, courtesy of the Valencia Mountain Enthusiasts. We experienced 6 totally different, totally varied hikes across the Valencia region in Spain, each of them absolutely breathtaking, and between each of the trips we stayed in 3 different cool little villages. Now, it's fair to say that our expectations of Spanish hiking were completely surpassed by this trip. Let's take a look. On day 1, we started in a little place called Chulilla. It's about 45 minutes drive outside Valencia. We took on a 16-kilometre hike and it incorporated the hanging bridges route. This walk took us down into a canyon and then round back up the side of the canyon. We went past a beautiful reservoir, and then towards the end of the walk we had to cross over the canyon on these really cool suspension bridges. Whilst the hike wasn't massively long in distance, it was quite undulating, and we actually found it really hard going in the heat. We did this walk in April, so imagine doing it much later in the year would be pretty torturous actually. I feel like I could actually jump in that today. eventually took us to Chelva, another small mountain village. We spent a bit of time wandering around the cool little windy streets, exploring the various different neighbourhoods which had Christian, Jewish, Moorish and Andalusian influences. Then we embarked on our hike to the Pena Cortada aqueduct, a Roman aqueduct that's carved directly into the rock. Passed by olive groves, through forested paths and over some more canyon bridges. Just before we got to the aqueduct, we stopped for some lunch, and Leanne was delighted to be able to use her penknife and make us a cheese and tomato sandwich on the hoof. Then after we were all fueled up, the best part of the day was then exploring the aqueduct itself. So we got to walk along the aqueduct where the water once had flowed through different through tunnels, little low ones, big high ones, having to duck down quite a bit. And then eventually you come out the other side and you actually walk over the aqueduct itself with a sheer drop at either side, so you can see that I was feeling a little bit wobbly as I was walking over that. It was then a pretty pleasant and short walk back to Chelva, where we enjoyed a cold beer with the locals. Day 3's hike started from a tiny little village called Almedihar. I've got to say, it's got to be probably my favourite hike of the week. They were all unique and stunning in their own ways, but this one was absolutely wow. So we started directly from the village. It was a pretty steep incline up a smallish hill, 763 metres, called La Dehesa. But the walk itself was just beautiful, through Mediterranean scrub, lots of different coloured flowers, and the smells. I mean, you could get lavender, there was rosemary, the pine trees. It was just absolutely fantastic. And as we got further up the hill and kind of looked back over the valley, we were rewarded with a cloud inversion. Just super. It wasn't long until the walk starts taking you through the Cork Oak trees, which are really unique trees. You can see where the bark's been taken away to make the cork. And the descent, it's a circular walk. The descent took us down through a charming forest before we returned to the village and back onto a very hot minibus. On day 4, we started from the Desertos de las Palmas National Park, where our challenge was to summit the smallish peak of 729 metres, El Bartolo. The trail itself took us through forests, pine forests, and over some pretty complex rocky ridges, which we found quite tough going at points. As always, the views were stunning, 360 panorama views around the surrounding area, including looking down onto Benicassim. The walk itself was beautiful, but the summit of El Bartolo not so much. One of those hills that they have erected a lot of pylons and equipment for telecommunications. But that was just a minor down point in the day. The rest of it was amazing, and we had a well earned drink back at a cafe close by the bus. Tree line there. Yeah. And then On day 5 we took on Penyagolosa. At 1,814 metres, it's the highest peak in the Penyagolosa Natural Park. Thankfully we were starting at a car park a bit farther up, so only had 300 metres of the ascent to do. And we were pretty intrigued when we arrived to see that the area was set up for a big trail running event, which did pique my interest until I discovered that the route was 60 kilometres long. You had to complete it in under 15 hours, and the majority of the course was uphill. Now, Penyagolosa itself, the route that we took, made it look more like a small rolling hill rather than an actual mountain. But once we got to the top, we well and truly had that top of a mountain feeling, with the cliffs and the rock face that you could see right over the edge. The other thing that made this hike particularly memorable were all the goats, just goats everywhere. And you'll also notice from the video that it was really cold compared to the other walks that we've been doing in Spain. Definitely needed our down jackets and even hats and gloves on this trail. last day we started from a slightly larger town called Montanos. So many different walks to do in this area. You can see all the different coloured paths that you can follow. But the route that we took us all the way around the edge of the canyon, where we were able to see a lot of amazing rock formations. You could see all the different colours of the rock in the canyon. We had to clamber down into the canyon itself and cross over the river and climbing back up the other side through some forested paths, and then eventually we finished our walk at the not so thermal springs where we took a dip in the water. Absolutely perfect way to end just an absolutely insanely amazing week.
Little baby one. Because when they have small ones, they are dangerous, ain't they?
you've enjoyed this video. If you have, we would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel or give us a follow over on social media. We're on Instagram, and you can also check out our website where there's more detailed updates on what we've been up to on our travels. There are some hiking reviews, and there's also the GPX routes that you can download of all of the hikes that we've completed. Thank you. And also make sure you check out Valencia Mountain Enthusiasts on the socials too. Can't recommend them more. Absolutely brilliant way to spend a week's hiking in Valencia under their expert guidance.